one. You may now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 6th, 2023 meeting of the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee of the Housing Opportunities Commission. I'm Rick Nelson, Chair of the BFNA Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Fran Kelleher and Jeffrey Merkowitz. And I think the Executive Director of HOC is with us.
Good afternoon.
Yes, and assorted other staff. The first item of business for the committee is the approval of the BFNA minutes for May 19th, 2023. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are hereby approved. The next item, or first item of business, is the county FY 25-30 capital improvements program budget. And to begin that process of discussion, I will turn it over to the Executive Director, Chelsea Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the public, and the HLC team. We're pleased to present to this committee our recommendation to move forward with a request from the county for continued support as it pertains to the capital improvement program support that they provide for our improvements at our scattered sites and other contributions from the county. I will turn it over to Tim Getzinger, our acting CFO, and Terry Fowler, our budget officer, to provide more details.
Thank you, Executive Director Andrews. Again, for the record, Tim Getzinger, acting CFO. Ms. Andrews did an excellent job to summarize what this item is, and Terry Fowler, our budget officer, will be providing the details. Terry, you are up.
You, Executive Director Andrews and Tim Getzinger. For the record, I'm Terry Fowler, Budget Officer of HOC. This year, Montgomery County's Office of Management and Budget will prepare the full cycle biennial capital improvement program to Council and the Executive. HOC was required to submit our request for capital funding for the next 6 years to OMB by September 7th. However, staff has requested and received an extension to September 14th in order to obtain commission approval at the September 13, 2023 commission meeting. HOC must submit a CIP submission to renew its current level of funding in our 2 revolving funds and our bond guarantee project. In addition, as Executive Director Andrews mentioned, it's prudent that we remind the county of the importance of their $1.25 million that they provide annually as supplemental funds for unit improvements in our deeply subsidized HOC and affiliate-owned units. The cost of the full renovations has increased over the years, and the amount of funding we currently have available will renovate approximately 40 units, and continuing this funding annually will allow us to fully renovate approximately 10 units annually and address more units if full renovations are not needed. In addition, we have 2 projects, one that has reached its completion and we're doing the final billing right now for the sewer and storm line improvements that were completed at Elizabeth Square on May 8th. The final amount is $995,000, and that final pricing will result in a savings of approximately $230,000 in current revenue being released from the county obligation. The final project is the demolition of the original Elizabeth House site. The amended CIP budget included $1.5 million towards the approximate cost of $3 million for the renovation. In addition to the county CIP funds, we have another $500,000 that is being contributed by HOC, and $1 million that will be covered through a Department of Housing and Community Affairs housing loan. The contractor was selected, and the residents at the original building have all vacated, and demolition activities have commenced, and it is expected to conclude in the late spring of 2024 due to the nature of the demolition. We are asking the commission to approve HOC's submission for the FY 25 to 30 capital improvements program budget in the amount of $88,127,000, as is reflected on the attachment on page 14 of your packet. That will continue our current funding and renew the annual funding of $1.25 million for each of the 6 years. And I would be happy to address any questions you may have.
Are there any?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a technical question, I guess. So the 6-year budget we're looking at is FY 25 through FY 30. But the bulk of the 88 million seems to be in previous years. So I'm trying to understand how we get to 88 million if the only thing showing up in the 6 years that we're being asked to approve is the 1.25 million each year.
Right. The total includes, so we have 2 revolving funds, and this is enabling us to have those total amounts of 12.5 million and 4 million respectively available as a revolving fund. So we use the funds and replenish it, and this gives us the authority to continue to do so. And we also have a $50 million capacity on the guaranteed obligation bond. So those are included in our total amount, but it's not new funding. It's funding that already exists and just revolves as we spend it and replenish it.
Okay, so it
The only
doesn't
additional
show
funding-
up, but it doesn't show up in those years.
It's
So
the way it's reflected. It
Yeah.
doesn't show up as new funding. What we show in the outer years are new funding amounts that we are
Okay.
requested, not things that have already been obligated. The other
Okay.
thing to keep in mind, because the county although they do a 6-year budget, every other year they make amendments. So they really only appropriate the first 2 years of the 6-year period when they approve it.
On the same general point that Jeff was raising, I was going to suggest that we might include in more clear language in the memo and anything we say about this, that how much of that is a revolving fund and is being repaid by us, as opposed to an outright grant by the county. We get into this whole thing about how much the county does and doesn't give to HOC. And that $50 million is not a gift from the county, except for the cost of issuance, because we do repay it. And I think that's a distinction that would be useful to make in terms of just showing that it's not an $88 million grant from the county.
Understood.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I guess, just being clear. So, because it appears like, the budget is 88 million, but
Right.
there's not, I mean, so even though those revolving funds and the Geo Bond Authority is already there and it's just revolving, it's still considered part of the budget.
Yes, that's how
Yeah.
the county prepares it. So when they present their capital improvements budget, they include the total authority that we have.
Yeah.
But we
Are
can make the
Are there opportunities to ask for additional things out of the CIP, or, when would we look at that?
So there are opportunities, but it typically, when we request funds, it comes from their general fund. And they don't necessarily encourage new requests, although we have made new requests. as you saw, the sewer improvements
Right.
was a new request, as well as the demolition of Elizabeth House. We did not make any additional requests this year, other than expressing the importance of the monies they've been giving us for renovations of our scattered site portfolio.
I think it's also a sign that we are trying to work cooperatively with the county. The county is trying to maintain some form of limits on their capital expenditures and are choosing not to significantly increase the capital improvements budget. So we've been very judicious in terms of when we have gone to the county to specifically ask for additional monies in the capital improvements budget.
In addition, the demolition of Elizabeth House, you may or may not remember that we originally requested the full $3 million, and we were approved half of that in the CIP, the 1.5 million. Because although it's capital, the nature of the funding for us competes with all of their other general fund obligations in their operating budget as well.
And then just, sorry, also on the math here. So the nearly 2.5 million for WSSC and Elizabeth House, that's also shown as part of the 88 million.
Yes, and those funds will be spent out in FY24 in this current year.
Right. So, but they would still be reflected in the FY25 through 30 budget?
We have to show them how much of the money they gave us has not yet been billed to them. So if you look at, if we could show the chart on page 14, this is showing how they track. So they look at what was obligated through FY24, and you can see under the FY24 column, those are the outstanding monies that were obligated but not yet spent.
Okay.
And that's how they track in their system until the project is fully expended and closed out.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a different way of thinking about the budget than I would typically think about it. So
it's just following the way the county presents their 6-year plan.
yeah. Okay. No additional questions.
Fran, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I recall these from years past, so the revolving fund nature of it didn't surprise me.
Then I would entertain a motion to support the staff's recommendation.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the request for supporting the staff recommendation for approval of the selection of Gilson Housing Partners as the independent contractor for our housing quality standards inspections for the Housing Choice Voucher Program.
Thank you. Yes, and other inspections. And so, of course, commissioners, inspections, annual inspections, and sometimes even complaint inspections are required to ensure that our residents are living in the highest quality residents that meet federal guidelines and HUD's guidelines, and that's through the Housing Quality Services, HQS inspections, but then our residential component also requires annual inspections. And so we want to leverage bringing in our outside contractor to be able to perform these inspections for us. I will turn it over to Lynn Hayes, our Director of Housing Resources Division, to provide more context.
Thank you, Director Andrews. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Lynn Hayes, Director of the Housing Resources Division. HOC is required to conduct housing quality standard inspections for all initial move-ins and annually for housing choice voucher families. We currently contract with an independent contractor to perform this function for us. The current contract will expire at the end of this month. Program regulations regarding housing quality standards, or HQS, can be found at Title 24, Section 982 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Housing quality standards establish the minimum criteria for health and safety of our program participants and must be met before any assistance can be paid on behalf of a family. Currently, there are 13 key components of the HQS, or housing quality standards, that are applicable to all housing types in Montgomery County. Annually, we conduct approximately 18,000 inspections. We issued a request for proposal to solicit it to qualified firms to perform various residential inspections consisting of HQS, Inspire, lead-based paint, and radon. Inspire stands for National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, and Inspire criteria will be replacing HQS effective October 1st of this year. However, housing authorities will have 1 year or up to 1 year to implement these new standards. The Inspire model is a new approach to assessing the housing quality, and HUD will be using these standards across multiple programs, not just the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Staff recommends that the Commission authorize the Executive Director to negotiate and enter into a contract with Gilson Housing Partners to conduct HQS inspections for the Housing Choice Voucher Program and residential inspections for HOC-owned properties. We're requesting approval of an initial contract for an initial 2-year terms, renewable in 1-year increments, in the amount of $865,500. To go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Our procurement office issued a request for proposal, RFP number 2380, on May 19th, 2023, with a requested return date of June 22nd, 2023. The RFP was posted on HOC's website and distributed to more than 244 vendors in the Montgomery County vendor registration system and bidders, the bidders list from the previous RFP. A pre-proposal meeting was held on May 31st, 2023, and 6 firms attended the pre-proposal conference. The scope of work outlined in the RFP includes conducting the various inspection types along with the administrative functions that go hand in hand with conducting the inspections. The scoring team was comprised of a panel of 3 persons, including myself and 2 persons from our resident services division who administer programs with HQS requirements. One of the panelists is also HQS certified. The scoring team, along with members from our Housing Resources Division, our Property Management Division, our Maintenance Division, and our Deputy Executive Director, viewed presentations from the top scoring companies who scored a minimum of 75 points of 100 points in the RFP criteria. The RFP criteria is based on 5 different factors. The first is the experience of the company or organization, valued at 25 points. We were looking for companies to demonstrate experience with conducting housing inspections, lead-based paint inspections, and radon inspections for housing authorities similar in scope and size of HOC, with an aggregate contract value of at least $200,000 within the last 5 years. The next scoring criteria is valued at 30 points, and it's based on the methodology that the firm or organization would use to demonstrate that they can perform the inspections that we need by the required deadlines, using an electronic device, conducting outreach to our landlords and tenants if they need to, being responsive to our landlords and tenants and waiting at least 15 minutes prior to leaving the inspection if no one shows up. The third criteria is the staffing and management plan, valued at 15 points. We were looking for organizations to demonstrate that they have ample staff to meet our program needs. Key staff must be available to conduct the various inspection types and be certified in HQS and Inspire. The next criteria is valued at 10 points, and it is if the company is a Section 3 small business, female, or minority firm, they could receive a maximum of 10 points. And the last criteria is the price, valued at a maximum of 20 points. Bids with lower pricing would receive higher points values. Those with unreasonable rates or could not be substantiated would be scored at a lower rate. The next slide, please. We received a total of 6 responses in response to the RFP. The first bid was from Atmos Solutions. Atmos is a small minority-owned business in Washington, D.C. They've worked with some local housing authorities, including Arlington and the District of Columbia. They have work valued at a little over $7 million within the last 5 years. The next bid that we received was from Bureau Veritas Technical Assessments, or BVTA. They are a consulting firm located in Ellicott City, Maryland. They have experience conducting environmental assessments, physical needs assessments. They've done some rad work for the city of Rockville as well. Next slide. Gilson Inspection Services is the recommended company. Gilson is located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They are a subdivision of Gilson Software Solutions, which was founded in 2008. They're very customer service oriented. Their mission is to transform the lives of the residents we serve by using cutting edge technology customized to the needs of their clients. And revolutionizing the inspection process while prioritizing health, safety, and accuracy and compliance. IEI is the current contractor that we're utilizing to conduct inspections. IEI is a minority-owned women firm based in Columbia, Maryland. They've been working with HOC since 2017. And have experience conducting HQS inspections and environmental testing. Next slide, please. McWright and Associates is a nationally recognized firm out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. They also offer a range of services for housing authorities and have conducted a large volume of inspections, currently 200,000 per year. And the last bid that we received is from Properties International. Properties International is a minority-owned business in Silver Spring. The principal in this agency is a real estate broker who has experience conducting lead-based paint risk assessments. Next slide. We are recommending Gilson Housing Partners. They scored the highest of the 6 bids that were received with a total of 94 points. Their experience, they've worked with numerous housing authorities, over 100, ranging in size from small to large agencies. They've conducted over 1,000 inspections per month with as little as 5 to 6 inspectors. 2 principals in this organization have over 30 years of experience working in the inspection industry. They are both REAC certified, and one of the members of the organization or staff person worked with HUD in creating the Inspire criteria, and he was a demonstration inspector for the Inspire demonstration. Regarding their methodology, they really captivated us with their use of technology, streamlining processes, and focusing on customer service. They utilize an app which allow landlords and tenants to view the location of the inspector in real time. They minimize waiting time in lieu of waiting all day for the inspector to arrive. They schedule appointments in 1 hour windows of time, which will be, I'm sure, very satisfying to our tenants. They send automated inspection reminders. They have digital photos and data storage supplied to us daily. They have a chat feature where the inspectors can communicate with the HOC staff while they're out in the field. They have a call center where all of the call center staff are trained on HQS processes. The call center staff are also bilingual and located in the United States, which is helpful to us. They're in the same time zone. Regarding the staffing and management plan, they'll take 12 staff persons for this bid with the ability to add additional staff if needed. And again, two of the principals have worked in the industry for a very long time. They are not a Section 3 minority or firm. However, they will hire a Section 3 tenant to take the position as a resident liaison. That is one of the dedicated staffing positions that they have indicated. The resident liaison's role is to send the correspondence to our tenants. If the tenant or landlord do not receive the correspondence, the resident liaison would hand carry or deliver it. Their role additionally is to explain or help interpret the inspection results and to conduct inspection workshops monthly or weekly as needed. In terms of pricing, Gilson was competitive and they were the lowest bidder of the six proposals that we received. So we highly recommend Gilson. One of their, I guess, aspects of their business that was captivating is that they've reduced the no-show rate by using technology. So they send the notice of the inspection 30 days in advance. 72 hours prior to the inspection, they send a reminder, then again 48 hours, then again on the day of the inspection. And ultimately what that does is reduce the rate of no-shows it has for some agencies from 20% to 8%. So it's definitely a cost-saving measure that we look forward to. So in closing, there are no budget impacts. We have budgeted in the Housing Choice Voucher Program for this inspections contract. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Are there any questions?
I have a question. For Gilson, which you say plans to have 12 staff for our particular contract, I do recognize that they're a large organization that serve many housing agencies, but what do you think is the time frame it will take them to staff up to that level to serve our needs, given the very tight employment situation that exists in our
I
area?
asked that exact same question during their presentation. And they do not anticipate a long hiring time range at all. They indicated that it happens rather quickly. They would advertise for the inspections here in this geographical area and then come here to be on site for a few weeks to train and get everyone running and up to speed. But I believe they said it was a relatively short turnaround time to hire. It was like 1 to 2 weeks is the response that they provided.
And would this be a position that we could advertise to our residents, or might there be conflict of interest issues of residents inspecting units that were HOC units or voucher units?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. There may be a conflict of interest. I don't know. Um, I don't know that I'm comfortable in answering that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
I think though, if Fran's raised a question, then I would suggest, Chelsea, we might consult with council and with the successful bidder to see whether or not it's possible. Because it does seem that that would be a good opportunity, and I understand the potential for a conflict of interest, but these are voucher holders. They're not our properties. So I don't know. I think it's something worthy of looking into.
Will do. And then, of course, the requirements, so we can try to determine how many positions, if any, are entry level where they train up, or
Right.
if you have to have a certain qualification and
Yeah.
or experience. But either way, I do think that we can work with our council as well as resident services to get the word out in regards to employment opportunities. And whenever we hear of any employment opportunity, we want to spread the word to our residents and our voucher holders. So we will follow up. Thank
And
you.
I
Yeah.
think
No.
on your point that you talk about their need to be trained and from the ground up, this is a 2-year contract with potential 2-year renewal. So there's going to be churning. So I think we ought to specifically work with, assuming there's not a conflict problem, work with the contractor to see about a training program for some of our residents.
Yeah, I would support that. I mean, it may or may not be that there are eligible candidates among our residents, but we should at least find out if we're able to.
Good.
Only question I have, or sorry, Fran, were you did you have additional questions?
No, I'm finished. Thanks, Jeff.
Just in terms of the HQS versus Inspire, just to clarify, will Gilson will they be initiating the Inspire standards immediately, or will they start out with HQS and move to Inspire, or how is that working?
I think they'll start with HQS and move to Inspire. So Inspire is effective now for public housing. So kind of nationwide, the focus has been on getting everyone up to speed and trained on the requirements for public housing. Since we have no public housing stock, I published where the implementation, though it's effective October 1st, we have 1 year to implement the Inspire standards. But they are well versed in Inspire, and they provide training on Inspire. And again, one of the gentlemen who worked there worked with HUD in creating the criteria. So they definitely are well versed in the Inspire requirements.
And I mean, what would be the reason for not starting out with Inspire, since they already are well versed in it? Is it a training issue, or what?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions, and I would move to support the staff's recommendation to approve the selection of Gilson Housing Partners for this contract, and to authorize the executive director to negotiate the contract with Gilson.
Do we want to do that or support their recommendation to the commission that the commission authorize it?
I thought
Is-
the intent of your motion was to support the staff recommendation.
Yeah, I thought that's what I said.
Okay. I second then.
Before I take a vote, let me go back to the question on Inspire. Do we know enough about Inspire to determine whether or not it's something that we need to educate our landlords about? I mean, what's the difference between Inspire and HQS? And while we're at it, the question I always ask, what's the difference between Inspire and 26, which is our local code?
So in answer to your question, do we know enough about it? I will wholeheartedly and honestly say no, I don't personally. But we definitely will take some training. Again, most of the training curriculum that has been available has been made available for public housing because that's the more immediate need. But we definitely will notify our landlords certainly of the differences before we implement and transition to utilizing the Inspire. Yes.
Then, to be clear, when these guys start, they are going to start on HQS. We have to authorize them to do Inspire.
No, we don't. Yes, we would tell them when to do Inspire. Correct.
I mean, I'm trying to be very clear on this because I understand they've got the ability to do Inspire, but if there are issues that our landlords might face, or we might face in terms of the inability to approve units, then I want us to be sure that when it is appropriate to use the Inspire requirements.
Absolutely.
So I'm suggesting that we need to include language to make sure that they can't pull the Inspire trigger until and unless we approve it.
Or
Okay.
yes.
The other, and then as you're at that and learning this, I do want the answer to the question in terms of how it relates to our local code, because as I frequently raise, you've got landlords and tenants who bristle when they have their units inspected, and to have it inspected one day by local code enforcement and then the next day by our HQS inspector is not the best thing. And we have tried unsuccessfully to have one take the place of the other and have had some difficulty in doing that over the years. So I'm just, again, raise that as an issue to look at, particularly since we've got a new standard that evidently is coming into play. And then a very small minor thing on page 18 of the slide of the packet. In the second paragraph, it says that the scoring team, consists of staff from the Resident Services Division. It doesn't say anything about your division.
Okay.
And I wondered when I read that last night, this is really strange that the division responsible for vouchers is not involved in the score.
An oversight. Thank you for pointing that out. We'll
if you would please just make that correction. Okay, I'm finished. Other than that, we have a motion and a second to support the staff recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then the motion has been approved. Oh, there is one other question I will ask. The current contract ends September 30?
Yes.
How can we onboard a new contractor by October 1?
We're going to move very quickly.
I mean, it gets to Fran's question in terms of staffing and training and all that. I mean, and we are always got the issue of not missing inspections and not getting caught when we get reviewed. So we need to be very careful about that we don't lose a month. Because it sounds like we might.
I think based on our presentation, when we met with them, they can handle a mass amount of inspections. So even if it means maybe doubling up for the first month to stay on target, that they will be able to handle the volume.
Well, I'm just, again, raising that. We've been through those wars before, as you well know, and would not like to go through them again. So let's just be careful on that. Okay. There not being any other business, if I'm not mistaken, then this meeting has come to a conclusion, and I will determine that it is adjourned.